Every morning at exactly 9 a.m., an old man named Harold Bennett sat beside the same dusty telephone. He would stare at it silently, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. Neighbors thought he was lonely. Some thought he had lost his mind. But what nobody understood was this: Harold wasn't waiting for just any call. He was waiting for one specific voice, a voice he hadn't heard for 40 years. And what happened when the phone finally rang changed everything. Harold Bennett lived in a small wooden house on the edge of a quiet town. The house looked frozen in time. The paint was fading, the curtains hadn't been changed in decades, and on a small table near the window sat an old rotary telephone. Every morning, Harold followed the same routine. He brewed a cup of weak coffee, slowly walked to the table, and waited. At 9 a.m. sharp, he would sit down beside the phone, not reading, not watching TV, just waiting. The neighbors had seen this routine for years, but one day, a new neighbor named Sarah Miller noticed something unusual. Harold never left the house between 9 and 11 a.m., not once. Curious, Sarah eventually knocked on his door, and that simple knock would uncover a story nobody expected. But the truth behind Harold's waiting was far more heartbreaking. Sarah first met Harold on a rainy afternoon. He opened the door slowly, leaning on his old wooden cane. "Hello?" he asked softly. Sarah smiled politely. "I live next door. I just wanted to check if you needed anything." Harold studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you, but I'm all right." But before Sarah could leave, she glanced inside the house, and she saw the phone. It looked untouched, yet strangely important. The next morning, Sarah noticed Harold again, sitting beside the phone, watching it, waiting. Finally, one day, she asked him directly, "Mr. Bennett, are you expecting a call?" Harold stayed silent for several seconds. Then he whispered something that gave Sarah chills. "Yes, I've been expecting it for 40 years." But what he revealed next shocked everyone. Harold slowly began telling his story. 40 years ago, he had a daughter named Emily. She was his entire world. Emily loved music, sunshine, and big dreams. But when she turned 22, she wanted to leave town. She had been offered a job in New York City. Harold didn't want her to go. They argued hard. That night, Emily packed her suitcase. At the door, she stopped and looked back at her father, her eyes filled with tears. "Dad, I'll call you when I get there. I promise." Harold was still angry, too angry. He simply nodded and said nothing. Emily left, and that was the last time he ever saw her. Days passed, then weeks, then months, but the phone never rang. At first, Harold thought she was busy. Then he thought maybe she forgot. But deep inside, he feared something much worse. Still, every morning at 9 a.m., he waited, because that was the time Emily said she would call. And even after 40 years, he refused to give up on that promise. But what happened next shocked everyone. One quiet afternoon, while Sarah was visiting Harold, something unexpected happened. The house was silent. The old clock ticked slowly on the wall. Then suddenly, ring! The old rotary telephone rang. Once. Harold froze. His hands trembled. Sarah stared at him. The phone rang again. Ring! For a moment, Harold looked terrified, as if the moment he had waited for his entire life had finally arrived. Slowly, Painfully slowly, he picked up the receiver. "Hello?" His voice cracked. There was silence. Then a woman's voice spoke softly. "Hello? Is this Mr. Harold Bennett?" Harold's eyes widened. "Yes? My name is Laura Mitchell. I'm calling from St. Mary's Hospital." Sarah felt her heart sink, and the truth that followed was even shocking. Laura explained that years ago, a woman named Emily Bennett had been admitted to their hospital after an accident. She had survived for several days, but before she passed away, she gave the nurse a message for her father. Emily had asked the nurse to call him, but the nurse accidentally wrote down one wrong digit in the phone number. The call never reached Harold. For 40 years, the hospital believed they had already delivered the message, but during a recent archive cleanup, the mistake was discovered. So they finally tracked down the correct number and called. Harold held the phone tightly, his eyes filled with tears. "Did she say anything?" There was a pause. Then Laura spoke softly. "Yes." She said, "Tell my dad I'm sorry. I never stopped loving him." Harold closed his eyes. A single tear rolled down his wrinkled cheek. 40 years of waiting, 40 years of silence, and finally, the call came. The next morning, Sarah walked past Harold's house again, but something was different. The chair beside the phone was empty. For the first time in 40 years, Harold wasn't waiting anymore. Because sometimes closure doesn't come when we expect it, but when it finally arrives, it can heal a lifetime of silence. And sometimes the words we wait our whole lives to hear are simply, "I never stopped loving you."